Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind. We're going to deliver. We're going to get the best people in the world.
You don't give people immunity unless they've committed a crime.
The president hires the very best people.
So something's wrong here. There is a cloud of corruption around her, around our government.
We're going to use our smartest and our best. We're not using political hacks anymore.
We do not need a reckless president who believes she is above the law.
He hires the best person for the job, period.
We have breaking news, and it is major breaking news in the Russia investigation. CNN has just learned that Robert Mueller has charged former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn with willfully and knowingly making false, fictitious, and fraudulent statements to the FBI.
Lock her up. That's right. That's right. Lock her up. Damn right. You're exactly right. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, on the first day of December, Mueller gave to me. Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah.
Oh!
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Trump's nuts roasting on an open fire. Flynn has cleaned up his brown nose. Oh, this is so much fun. Isn't this good? We got a perp walk this morning. Isn't that the best? Isn't that the best, everybody? I love that. Keep it coming, Mueller. I won't call you Mueller if you get to, the big cheese, the head cheese, his head cheese is what he is, head cheese. Just gross. Oh, this is unbelievable. All right, so Michael Flynn has pleaded guilty to the FBI. For the record, that is the first domino to fall inside the Trump administration, inside the grounds of the very, very lily white House. This is breaking. It is continuing as far as information is now coming out. It looks as if, Michael Flynn had lied, just like Sally Yates said he did. We'll go through a timeline for you about everything. But, remember, Flynn said if I had done 1/10 of what she did, meaning Hillary Clinton, I would be in jail. Except moron boy forgot about the option of the plea bargain. Okay, so he got the plea bargain, and what he exchanged, I'm not really, crystal clear on, but I'm pretty sure I know, and I'm pretty sure you know.
Mike Flynn is a fine person.
There is a breakdown of trust between our federal government in Washington, D.C. and the American public, and you and I. There's a breakdown of trust. We have to rebuild that trust, and that's what Donald Trump will do.
General Flynn is a wonderful man. I think he's been treated very, very unfairly by the media. As I call it, the fake media in many cases. And I think it's really a sad thing that he was treated so badly.
In the military, we talk about doing the harder right. And many times doing the harder right or taking the harder right path means telling the truth. Telling the truth.
What I can confirm, having spoken to him about it, is that those conversations that happened to occur around the time that the United States took action to expel diplomats had nothing whatsoever to do with those sanctions.
I asked for his resignation. He respectfully gave it. He is a man who there was a certain amount of information given to Vice President Pence, who's with us today, and I was not happy with the way that information was given.
If a guy who knows this business, if I did a tenth of what she did, I would be in jail today.
Very, very unfair.
So Lock her up today was screamed at him, except lock him up was what was being yelled at him there in that last little bit of the very short, very abbreviated, almost like a ripoff of a perp walk. Don't you want like a longer? I want a longer. I want, like a quarter mile would do it for me. It was like the car was parked so close to the curb and it was like, boom, it was over. I'm like, come on. Where's the Christmas spirit that Trump promised? Oh, did you see the national tree lighting last night? It was the biggest ever, best attended tree lighting in the history of the world, period. They brought Christmas back, everybody, except nobody wants Christmas back, apparently. Everybody rejected it. That was amazing. Nobody showed up last night. So, listen, this perp walk, for me, they were just, the only good part was when he came out of court after he entered his guilty plea. After he came out of court, people were out there and they were screaming, lock him up, lock him up. And I'm sure even Michael Flynn had to appreciate the irony, even though Michael Flynn turns out to be a world heavyweight champion moron. You remember back when we first learned that, and they started to try, and they're still trying, to blame Obama for all this? Remember, Susan Rice had to go on the TV because Donald Trump had tweeted that that Obama was wiretapping Trump Tower and all that. It turned out that what was going on was that the standard, typical surveillance of Russian operatives in this country, like a Sergei Kislyak, right? And so Sergei Kislyak's phone calls were always recorded. Always. That's the FISA warrant, right? He was always, under surveillance whenever and vice versa. Trump was under surveillance in Russia. I can't wait to see. I can't wait. But back then, when we were first starting to put these stories together, when Sally Yates came on the TV and said that she had gone to the White House to speak to Don McGahn, the White House counsel, about Michael Flynn, that he had lied to the FBI, she knew. The day that she went to the White House was the day after Michael Flynn was interviewed by the FBI. And she knew, as acting director, that Michael Flynn had lied under oath. Why? Because we knew there were transcripts of a conversation that Michael Flynn had with Sergei Kislyak, who is routinely surveilled. That's why Michael Flynn is so obnoxious. That's why he's such a moron. That's why even he has to appreciate the irony of having people outside that courthouse today screaming, lock him up. All right, maybe not appreciate, but recognize. I think even an idiot like him, who spoke openly on the phone about how he was directed by senior administration officials to contact the Russians, to intervene in various enterprises. I mean, the list of what he's guilty of is so long. And so when you look at this plea deal where he just pleads guilty to lying to the FBI, but then you look at the lies that Mueller selected to put into the charging papers, and the lie is, about contacting Sergei Kislyak in the first place. The lie is whether or not he was directed by a senior administration official to contact the Russians in the first place. There's also another lie that has to do with Jared Kushner and the Israelis, which is what's so interesting about this Bibi Netanyahu joint press conference that Trump gave with Bibi Netanyahu, where he defended Michael Flynn and called the media fake. He's standing next to Bibi Netanyahu, and Bibi Netanyahu asked Donald Trump to intervene in a UN Security Council vote having to do with Israeli settlements going forward and whether or not the UN would condemn it. And because Russia and China as well are on the Permanent Security Council and they have equal say in these resolutions, Trump told Michael Flynn to contact the Russians to ask them not to stand in the way of, letting the Israeli settlements go forward without UN disapproval. I mean, it's a twisted story, but the basic truth is that Sally Yates had gone to the White House, and before her, on October 10th, before the election, I think it was November 10th, after the election, 2 days after the election, you remember Obama and Donald Trump met in the Oval Office for a handoff of power to show the, people of the United States that even if it was Trump, there'd be a peaceful handover of power. This is who we are. This is what America does, right? And so Obama was forced. And what really creeps me out is Michelle having to show Melania the kids' rooms and the bathrooms. Oh, God, it just gives you the... Look what she's done to it. She's made it into a dark, dank Christmas, like in Siberia. Did you see her decorations? Woof. But okay, so on November 10th, 2 days after the election, President Obama met with President-elect Trump in the Oval Office. During that meeting, Obama warns Trump not to hire Michael Flynn as national security advisor, which Trump does anyway, or in spite, or because it was an anti-Obama move. Who the hell knows? And shortly after that, Flynn is called to testify to the FBI. He lies to the FBI, and the very next day, Sally Yates goes to the now White House counsel, Don McGahn, the counsel to President Trump, and says, Flynn is blackmailable. Flynn has violated statutes. It's all I can say publicly. She did an interview with Anderson Cooper, remember, after long last, where she said that he engaged in some lawless behavior and that she did go to Don McGahn and that she did tell him and warned him.
There's certainly a criminal statute that was implicated by his conduct.
Yates was asked to come back to the White House for another meeting with the White House counsel on January 27th, the day after her initial warning. Yates disputes the way the White House is characterizing the reason for the second meeting.
Sean Spicer said that meeting was to discuss issues that were left unclear in your first meeting with Don McGahn. Do you feel that you were clear in your warning to McGahn in that first meeting?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything at all unclear about the first meeting. Mr. McGahn had some additional issues he wanted to discuss, but there was nothing unclear about the first meeting.
Okay, so she goes to a first meeting. She tells Don McGahn, your guy, your national security advisor testified yesterday to the FBI, and guess what? He freaking lied. He is lawless. He's blackmailable. There's information that he's lying and covering up. We've got phone intercepts, okay, because we routinely surveil these Russian diplomats, and we caught him on the phone a time or two. And we've got, the photos previously of him sitting in Russia. He didn't disclose that he was lobbying for Russia. He didn't disclose he was lobbying for Turkey. He didn't disclose certain phone calls, and he's in violation. And what happens? Sally Yates gets fired. Yeah, Sally Yates gets fired.
The White House didn't get access to that underlying evidence described by Ms. Yates until Thursday, February 2nd.
They could have looked at it sooner.
Oh, yes, it was ready on Monday the 30th.
You wanted the White House to act?
Absolutely, yes.
To do something?
We expected the White House to act.
Did you expect them to act quickly?
Yes.
There was urgency to the information?
Yes. I called on January 30th, that Monday morning, to let Mr. McGahn know that it was ready. We had made arrangements over the weekend. That was one of the other issues that he had raised in this second meeting, was whether they could look at the underlying evidence that established General Flynn's conduct. And, this is really unusual for us or for the FBI to allow that. But
because there is an ongoing investigation.
Right, but this was really important.
On that Monday, January 30th, 3 days after first warning the White House about Michael Flynn, Sally Yates was fired. She'd instructed the Department of Justice not to defend President Trump's executive order on immigration. Sally Yates was out, and Michael Flynn was still the national security advisor.
Jesus. So, last night, the New York Times broke a story that Donald Trump keeps on asking Senator Richard Burr, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, to end this investigation. End it, end it, end it. And Burr, is refusing to end it. I don't think he wants it to end, because when it ends, I don't think it's going to end well for Donald Trump. Right now, there's like a possibility that he's guilty of colluding with the Russians and a possibility that he's innocent. But when Mueller wraps it all up, it's not going to turn out well for Donald Trump. So I wouldn't rush the end of this investigation if I were you, Donald, because,
believe me,
it's not going to turn out well.
commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience. Visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Hey everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show, and all I want for Christmas is an impeachment. But the next best thing is working at the Randi Rhodes Show, and that can't happen without your support. Let's help Randi make this a hard truth holiday season, and she can't do that without your support. So please keep listening and buy a stinking podcast.
Happy holidays, jerky fans. Herky Jerky knows it's the season to enjoy the world's best jerky and meat sticks, and they want you to save a bundle while doing it. Herky Jerky, first of all, would like to thank you all you fiercely loyal customers, because they had their most successful year thanks to you despite Mother Nature doing its worst. Jason at Herky Jerky is so grateful that you enjoy his products, and everyone at Herky Jerky is so glad to provide them. So, as a special thank you, Herky Jerky is serving up their best offer of the year for Christmas giving. $10 off any order of $60 or more, or $15 off any order $100 or more without a promo code. Just visit herkyjerky.com. And the now famous bacon jerky, new fat-free and delicious turkey jerky, and all four of the new nitrite and preservative-free flavors, plus good old beef jerky, and all the exotic game jerkies make perfect holiday gifts. Buffalo, elk, venison sticks, 3 different varieties of beef smokies, all make great stocking stuffers. So choose your favorites now. Take advantage of the savings, which also includes free shipping on any 2 packs or more. Everyone at Herky Jerky would like to wish a safe and happy holiday season to all of you, and thank you once again for your loyalty. This offer starts today and it goes through all of December. Happy holidays from herkyjerky.com.
Whether you're listening to me, Mark Levine, each Monday and Wednesday,
or me, Leslie Marshall, each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday,
you can hear us 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Here's a sample of what you'll hear.
I know that my fellow progressives out here sometimes sit and watch the news with astonishment, sometimes with our mouth agape, wondering what our country is doing, what our president is doing, and at least what I wonder all the time is, how do Republicans deal with it? I mean, I know how we Democrats deal with it. We're horrified, sad, and throwing things at the wall. But Republicans are having their own problem, at least some of them, with the administration and what they're up to. I wanted to get the Republican perspective from a Republican that I actually like, Mike Lane, the president of Intelligence Strategies.
I learned my trade. I learned my skills on the way things used to be, and I think things are not that way anymore.
Again, that's Mark Levine every Monday and Wednesday.
And Leslie Marshall each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Ty Cobb, a White House lawyer, giving a statement on behalf of the White House in response to the Flynn news. We should point out, I reported earlier this year that President Obama tried to warn President Trump to avoid Michael Flynn. That happened during the transition. It was shortly after the election, actually,
2 days.
when President-elect Trump at the time came to the White House and met with President Obama. It was in that meeting when President Obama warned President-elect Trump to stay away from Michael Flynn. He brought him on board as national security advisor anyway. But here is the statement from Ty Cobb, the White House lawyer. We'll put this up on screen. This is basically how the White House is responding to it at this point. It says, today, Michael Flynn, a former national security advisor at the White House for 25 days during the Trump administration and a former Obama administration official, entered a guilty plea to a single count of making a false statement to the FBI. The false statements involved mirror the false statements to White House officials, which resulted in his resignation in February of this year. Nothing about the guilty plea or the charge implicates anything or anyone other than Mr. Flynn. The conclusion of this phase of the special counsel's work demonstrates again that the special counsel is moving with the deliberate speed and clears the way for a prompt and reasonable conclusion. Interesting to note there also in that statement is that the White House has this expectation, and I talked to a source close to the White House earlier this morning who is close to Team Trump. And there seems to be this expectation, I think it's a false one, that these things, these matters in the special counsel's office are going to wrap up anytime soon. If you just look at what Michael Flynn is pleading guilty to, and what is involved in these court documents, you have federal investigators saying that Trump transition officials, Flynn is preparing to say that Trump transition officials directed him to make contacts with the Russians. That would obviously require the special counsel's office to reach out to those Trump transition officials to get to the bottom of that information.
Oh, I wonder who those people are. Well, it was probably Jared Kushner and Jeff Sessions and probably Trump himself, because remember, only he can do it, right? He's the guy in charge. Whatever he wants done is what gets done, right? Right? And blaming Obama, are you kidding me? I'm telling you, November 10th, look it up. November 10th, just Google it, do a YouTube of it. No, the November 10th meeting between President-elect Trump and Barack Obama. And they were sitting there, and then after the cameras left, Barack Obama warned Donald Trump not to bring Flynn, who Obama had fired as the director of national intelligence, not to bring him in, especially not as national security advisor, because they all knew he was blackmailable, because everyone had heard these tapes. Everyone knew that Flynn was on tape talking to various Russians and diplomats, and the things he was saying, we still don't know. We don't have the transcripts. And this is a plea deal. This isn't just what he was guilty. This was a plea deal. Now, this does carry with it lying to federal prosecutors, lying to the Senate, lying to the House, lying to the FBI, carries with it 5 years in prison. But remember, Michael Flynn was worried about his son, and the list of charges against him was so long. It was crazy. It was money laundering, and it was hiding money, and the FARA violation. You're not even hearing about that, failing to register as a foreign agent, that you're not even... He copped a deal. And this deal requires that he be interviewed by Mueller without counsel, seriously, without his lawyers present, under oath, and be subject to lie detector tests. And if he lies, they will revoke the plea deal. If he doesn't provide the information that his lawyer, I tried to explain this to a caller the other day, that the way this works is when you're making a plea deal, you offer a proffer, it's called. And the proffer is an offer. It's an offer of what you can truthfully, tell a grand jury, what you can truthfully tell the prosecutor, what you can truthfully show as being factually correct about somebody who is in more hot water than you, who is the target of a investigation. And if you can show that you can deliver very, very needed, important, valuable information to a prosecutor, then the prosecutor will enter into a plea deal with you. So Flynn's lawyer, Mr. Kellner, had to provide Mueller with a proffer, and he had to tell what information Flynn had on senior transition officials, but most importantly on Donald Trump. Now, I'm going to play for you an ABC News report that came across just not too long ago. Listen carefully.
According to confidants of General Flynn, he feels he has been abandoned by President Trump, and he is now prepared to testify fully about Trump, that he says that Mr. Trump directed him to be in contact with the Russians during the campaign.
Did you hear
directed him to be in contact with the Russians during the campaign. Do we know what those contacts were about?
Initially, they began with contacts to deal with ISIS, cooperation in Syria to deal with ISIS, and then it evolved beyond that. And George, if you look at the timeline that you were discussing with John and Pierre, he lied to the FBI on January 24th. On January 26th, Sally Yates, the acting attorney general, told the White House that Flynn had lied to the FBI. The very next day, on January 27th, the president, out of the blue, calls James Comey into the White House for a dinner and reportedly asked for his loyalty.
Asked for his loyalty, and of course later on calls James Comey in again and finally indeed fires the FBI director James Comey.
Right. Here's James Comey talking about that dinner. We played you Sally Yates, who went to the White House counsel the day after Flynn lied to the FBI. She was asked back the following day to provide evidence of what she was, telling them. That Flynn was blackmailable, that Flynn had lied to the FBI, that Flynn had violated numerous statutes, and that he really should be removed today. And they didn't remove him, obviously. They kept him there. And then, in January, I guess it was late January, the day after Sally Yates goes to Don McGahn, the president, Donald Trump himself, calls Comey in and asks for a loyalty pledge, which is what James Comey testified to at the time.
Let me move to the January 27th dinner, where you said, quote, the president began by asking me whether I wanted to stay on as FBI director. He also indicated that lots of people, again your words, wanted the job. You go on to say that the dinner itself was seemingly an effort to, quote, have you ask him for your job and create some sort of, quote unquote, patronage relationship. The president seems, from my reading of your memo, to be holding your job or your possibility of continuing in your job over your head in a fairly direct way. What was your impression, and what did you mean by this notion of a patronage relationship?
Well, my impression, and again, it's my impression, I could always be wrong, but my common sense told me that what was going on is either he had concluded or someone had told him that you've already asked Comey to stay and you didn't get anything for it. And that the dinner was an effort to build a relationship, in fact, he asked specifically, of loyalty in the context of asking me to stay. And as I said, what was odd about that is we'd already talked twice about it by that point, and he'd said, I very much hope you'll stay. I hope you'll stay. In fact, I just remembered sitting here, a third one, when you've seen the picture of me walking across the Blue Room, and what the president whispered in my ear was, I really look forward to working with you. So after those encounters...
And that was just a few days before you were fired.
Yeah, that was on the Sunday after the inauguration. The next Friday, I have dinner, and the president begins by wanting to talk about my job. And so I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute, 3 times you've already asked me to stay or talked about me staying. My common sense, again, I could be wrong, but my common sense told me what's going on here is he's looking to get something in exchange for granting my request to stay in the job.
Oh, my God. Remember that? Remember this?
All in one dinner, the president raised your job prospects. He asked for your loyalty and denied allegations against him. All took place over one supper. Now, you told Senator Warner that the president was looking to, quote, get something. Looking back, did that dinner suggest that your job might be contingent on how you handled the investigation?
I don't know that I'd go that far. I got the sense my job would be contingent upon how he felt how he felt I conducted myself and whether I demonstrated loyalty. But I don't know whether I go so far as to connect it to the investigation.
You said the president was trying to create some sort of patronage relationship. In a patronage relationship, isn't the underling expected to behave in a manner consistent with the wishes of the boss?
Yes.
Okay.
Or at least consider how what you're doing will affect the boss as a significant consideration.
And, you know, back then, we sort of understood what he was driving at. I mean, those of us who really paid attention knew that Sally Yates had gone to Don McGahn and said that Michael Flynn lied to the FBI, that there were intercepted phone calls. We knew that because we read and passed it on to you. And that Comey was then called the very next day after Sally Yates told Don McGahn that Flynn was in deep, deep doo-doo, that he had lied to the FBI, that there were a lot of violations, that he hadn't registered as a foreign agent, that he had taken money he didn't declare on his forms for his security clearance, that he had lied to the Office of Personnel when he was re-upping his security clearance, that he'd been fired by Barack Obama for being a wackadoodle. You know, all these things were known, right? And so, but back then we were left trying to put all these pieces together to try and figure out. And then we started to understand that Flynn was very loyal to Putin. Then we found out he was lobbying for Turkey too. And that a plan, this is a new thing today, that a plan to drive ISIS out of Raqqa in Syria, was nixed by Michael Flynn. Why? And this is why it matters that he was lobbying for Turkey and didn't disclose. The Turks hate the Kurds. I told you, the Kurds are our friends. The Turks hate the Kurds. Why do they hate the Kurds? Well, Kurds currently live in Turkey. Turkey is one country, but they live in an area of Turkey, not all of them, but, you know, a very large proportion of them live in a place that they would like to rename Kurdistan. They would like their own country. They would like to break away from Erdogan. They would like to have their own democracy, right? And so they volunteer to fight for the United States, hoping that the United States, being this beacon of democracy, would in fact, intervene on their behalf at the end of their dying and bloodshed and wounding, fighting ISIS with us in Syria. Well, there was a plan on the table that the Obama administration had put forward to run ISIS out of Raqqa using the Kurds as the main ground force. Under our guidance, we would advise they would fight. And Flynn, because he's lobbying for Erdogan in Turkey, they hate the Kurds, said, I don't want to see that happen. I don't want the Kurds elevated. I don't want the Kurds to become some war heroes. I don't want the Kurds, And so Flynn killed that plan. He killed that plan. Of course, he left the White House, and that was exactly the plan that we used to push ISIS out of Raqqa in the end. But it was Obama's plan. And the Trump administration said no to it, prolonging the agony because Flynn was lobbying for Erdogan. He was lobbying for Turkey and didn't disclose that he was a foreign agent for Russia and for Turkey, and that he had another contract with another company. I mean, the man is just, he was, the whole administration, world heavyweight champion liars. Every time Trump calls it a hoax, he's lying. Jeff Sessions yesterday was up on Capitol Hill on the House side testifying to the House Intelligence Committee, and he invoked executive privilege, which the president himself has not asserted. Meaning, if you work for Donald Trump in the White House, meaning you have no integrity, principles, or character, and you say, I will work for Donald Trump, then if the president decides to shield you or protect you when you're subpoenaed, which you will be, or when you're called to testify under oath, which you surely will be, or if you're, in a negotiation with Mueller, which obviously everybody is, then if the president wants to, he can assert executive privilege having to do with conversations he personally had with you while he was president. Not before, not when he was elected, while he was president. Well, the president has not done this on the behalf of Jeff Sessions. He has said many times out loud that he hates Jeff Sessions. He's been pissed off that Jeff Sessions recused himself from the management of this special prosecutor, Bob Mueller, and he has railed against Jeff Sessions publicly ever since. While Jeff Sessions, also being a good brown-noser and loving the fact that he is changing civil rights in America from the inside because we're under attack, is just not willing to let it go. So he lies for the president repeatedly. Yesterday, he was called to the House Intelligence Committee to testify about things he had obviously lied about. And he refused to answer questions, saying they were privileged because they happened between him and the president while the president was president. Can't do that unless the president asserts it. You can't just willy-nilly say, like if I met President Clinton or if I met President Bush or if I whatever, and we had a conversation, it's not protected because he's the president and I had a conversation unless the president himself says that conversation that I had with Randi is privileged and confidential, and therefore she can claim executive privilege. But I can't claim it because I felt like it. Adam Schiff was interviewed today on CNN and asked, what is going on with Sessions? And Adam Schiff, in no uncertain terms, asserted openly and honestly, because now we're getting to the meat of the matter. Now we're getting close. Look, this thing won't end by year end. Well, maybe it will, but 2018, not 17, because we're talking money laundering. We're talking financial crime. I mean, Manafort, 12 counts of financial crimes, okay? Rick Gates, his partner there too. 12 counts of financial violations. Financial law breaking, money laundering, secreting, lying to them. I mean, it's unbelievable. So now you have 4 people who have either been indicted and 2 of them pled guilty and are cooperating with Mueller. So now they're starting to be able to tell you things because they're public. So on the other side, I'm going to play you Schiff's interview this morning. It's stunning.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randi's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randi's house. Eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randi was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please go to randyrhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
Hello, Progressive Voices tune-in listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
California last year became the 5th state to allow people with terminal illnesses to request pills from their doctors to end their lives.
Compassion and Choices is the nation's oldest, largest, most active nonprofit that works to improve care and expand choice at the end of life. We really believe that people should be, the determiners of their own destiny. They should be in the driver's seat, and they should have all options necessary to make sure that that's the case.
Why do you think there's so much angst about the End of Life Option Act?
Well, I think there's angst about the end of life in general, right? This is it's a topic that for many of us brings about a lot of stigma or a lot of discomfort because it's not something that we talk about widely in the public sphere, and one that, frankly, our organization and I personally believe should be out there in the open. And this option being debated in a public sphere really puts that forward.
I work in hospice, and it's difficult because so many of our patients come to us or referred to us within the last week of life, which doesn't really allow us to do much work with the patients and their families as far as accepting and moving through this process. So I wish that we had that conversation more frequently.
That's the big goal, really, right, is that we're upstreaming these conversations as much as possible. And the amazing thing that I think the End of Life Option Act does, not only does it give those patients who need it this option that they need at the end of life, but it's not sterile, it's not morbid, but it's really about teaching your family and your care team and those that are around you how to love you in your last days.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
Whether you're listening to me, Mark Levine, each Monday and Wednesday,
or me, Leslie Marshall, each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday,
you can hear us 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Here's a sample of what you'll hear.
I know that my fellow
Why do you believe you were fired?
Sit and watch the news with astonishment, sometimes with our mouth agape, wondering what our country is doing, what our president is doing, and at least what I wonder all the time is how do Republicans deal with it? I mean, I know how we Democrats deal with it. We're horrified, sad, and throwing things at the wall. But Republicans are having their own problem, at least some of them, with the administration and what they're up to. I wanted to get the Republican perspective from a Republican that I actually like, Mike Lane, the president of Intelligence Strategies.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on randyrhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or progressivevoices.com now.
All right, this is Adam Schiff and Jake Tapper.
In your view, has the president lied about what communications his team had with Russia?
Well, abundantly and frequently and in about just about every way.
Oh, my God.
But most significant in denying that this happened, saying it's a hoax, saying, well, I asked Putin, we don't really know. Did he do it? He says he didn't. We know exactly what the Russians did, and the president knows. So, yes, when he says to the country, we don't know, that's a lie. When he says we had no contact with the Russians, that's a lie. When his son says, I had no contacts with WikiLeaks, that's a lie.
Oh, my God.
When General Flynn said, I never discussed sanctions with the Russian ambassador, that was a lie. And unfortunately, the list goes on and on.
Today, final question, as you look at the president's national security advisor here, what he has pled guilty to, the substance of those conversations, the people he had those conversations with, including in the Trump transition team, do you believe that what we see here today leads to the president, led up to the president himself?
Well, I don't know. It all depends, I guess, on who those senior transition officials are. But if those senior transition officials have been interviewed by the FBI, and if they made the same false statements that General Flynn did, and they were part of that discussion that led to those interactions with Kislyak, then they face the same exposure that General Flynn did, and this may not be the last guilty plea we see.
Oh, my God. Okay. So the lying, right? It's all about the lying.
It's very clear that the Trump administration, really from the president on down, was trying to change policy toward Russia, was trying to in some way or the other assure the Russians that there would be a new policy, that perhaps sanctions would be lifted, that the United States was going to do things differently with them. The question, of course, remains unanswered, is was this payback for something during the campaign? What we are listening to now is all these things that have happened after the campaign, after Trump is in office, when he's president, and he's surprisingly reaching out to the Russians and being nice to them. I mean, this is kind of, if you think about it, it's very odd for a president in his first few weeks in office not to reach out to our closest allies in Europe, to the Brits, people like that, the Chinese, the second largest economy in the world. No, there is concerted efforts made to reach out to the Russians and to suggest to them, we're going to be very nice to you, and here's what we want. So the question that we don't know is, why were they doing that? And this has always been the puzzle of the Trump campaign and presidency. Why this particularly benign attitude towards Russia?
What about the evolution of the defense then, right, in doing this? Initially, that they weren't really truly in touch, and it was about only, you heard Sean Spicer say X, Y, and Z, to now saying what? It was
well, it's important to point out that what Sean Spicer said was in fact lies. That was false.
Right.
The White House has repeatedly lied about this. Flynn lied to the FBI about it. As we now know, he's pleaded to a felony. So that itself raises the question. If there's nothing here, why is everybody lying?
Seriously, dude, if there's nothing here, why is everybody lying?
30 seconds. Now that we know, according to sources, it was Jared Kushner. What's the next big question?
Honestly, I don't think there is another big question, because if it's Jared Kushner, it's essentially the president. I don't think you get closer to the president than Jared Kushner.
I mean, it is stunning. This is right into Trump world. This is the heart of it. All right, let me play you a little timeline just to refresh all of our memories about how this all came to pass. How long we've been suffering with this madness. And, if you are a podcast subscriber and you listen to yesterday's show, I mean, we put a clip of it, a free clip up there on the YouTubes and the Facebook. But yesterday we were telling you how we have been invaded by a foreign agent, Trump, Russia, and that Trump is realigning us with autocrats, with the Russian oligarchy and the Russian communist way and the Russian closed society and the Russian lack of free speech and the Russian lack of a free press and the controlling of their people. Autocrats like President Xi in China, who has just given himself awesome powers, and pulling us away from our allies like Britain by retweeting white supremacists and, claiming that he's a complete and total fascist, and he's down with the fascist governments, the communist governments of the world, and blowing up our current NATO situation with Germany and France and Britain being our allies. So this plays right into it. This obviously is why Putin had a preference in the election for Donald Trump and actively worked to influence the election in many, many ways, from hacking into the DNC to hacking into the voter registration rolls to putting up fake Twitter and bots and retweeting Donald Trump with bots and advocating for Trump and spreading white supremacist memes and all these things that we have come to learn they did, and passing rumors that Hillary's a pedophile, always a pedophile. It's really interesting. As Donald Trump commits to campaigning for Roy Moore this weekend, oh no, he won't set foot in Alabama. He'll go to Pensacola, which is 25 miles from the Alabama border, and the same media market. The same media market. But he won't set foot in Alabama. But he's going to campaign this weekend in the media for Roy Moore, a pedophile. So this tells you, why they're homophobic, because they're always the ones that are caught in the bathroom on the roadside with a, white stance. Why pedophilia? Because Roy Moore, that's why. And others, I got a great Roy Moore story. I hope we get to it today. But here's the timeline.
All right, we've got the breaking news coming out of the special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe here that former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleading guilty to lying to the FBI about meetings with Russian officials. And the other piece of the breaking news is the fact that Jared Kushner, according to sources, Jared Kushner is the very senior member of the presidential transition team who directed Michael Flynn to have these contacts with the Russian ambassador. So let's just pause for a minute. Let's break down the timeline of events leading up to where we are here today. According to this court filing, Flynn talked to the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak. That was back on December 22nd, asking him to delay or defeat a vote on a UN Security Council resolution regarding Israeli settlements. We just learned the Kushner news, right? That Jared Kushner was the one who directed him to make the call. Flash forward to the 29th of December. He talks to Kislyak again about the sanctions that the U.S. imposed on Russia and Russia's response to that. Those are the two conversations the FBI says Flynn lied to them about. And then, nearly a month later, the White House was still denying that there was anything inappropriate about those contacts.
I talked to General Flynn about this again last night. One call talks about 4 subjects. One was the loss of life that occurred in the plane crash that took their military choir. 2 was Christmas and holiday greetings. 3 was to facilitate or to talk about a conference in Syria on ISIS, and 4 was to set up to talk about, after the inauguration, setting up a call between President Putin and President Trump.
Now, the day after we saw Sean Spicer there, so January 24th, that's when Flynn was interviewed by the FBI. And that's when he apparently lied. But he didn't resign until 3 weeks later after admitting he misled the vice president about these conversations with this Russian ambassador. This is what President Trump had to say about it at the time.
When I looked at the information, I said, I don't think he did anything wrong. If anything, he did something right. He was coming into office. He looked at the information. He said, that's fine. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be, and he didn't just call Russia. He called and spoke to both ways. I think there were 30-some-odd countries. He's doing the job. You know, he was just doing his job. The thing is, he didn't tell our vice president properly, and then he said he didn't remember. So either way, it wasn't very satisfactory to me.
Oh, man. All right. Paul in Woodinville.
Oh, happy day. Let's start drinking early.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's got to be getting close because obviously you don't let the National Security Advisor plead down to the least of charges, Martha Stewart level charges. If there's not, if you're, you know, and I think
if they didn't trade information for that plea, right?
Right. Well, if that's all he had, like, by the way, I just had a lovely conversation with Lars Larson. It was so much fun.
Oh God, I've had a conversation. I've had many with Lars Larson. He's so impermeable. His mind is so closed. It's unbelievable. He's in a bubble, man.
Well, you know, he was a little. He wasn't quite on his game today, I must say. But you know, he's saying, well, this is all they have. And I said, well, if that's all they have, if lying to the FBI is all they have on Flynn, then why wasn't Flynn just fight it and see what you come up with? Like, see if you can get it on a jury or some kind of a mistrial, some kind of procedural thing. You don't plead guilty just because they said. Obviously, they figure you're guilty. So then he's trading information.
Can I just tell you, there are documents that show that this isn't him pleading guilty to lying to the FBI by itself. The charging documents say that he's going to take a plea deal and plead to a lesser charge, provided that he testifies and interviews with Mueller and the team about the information in his proffer that he gave to Mueller that says that he is willing and able to say that he was directed by Donald Trump to do these things. That's what the deal is. It's not. So if Lars Larson or any other conservative is out there pretending that this is the only charge, then they didn't read any of the charging documents. They have no earthly idea that this is a deal. And the deal is contingent upon Michael Flynn.
How well Flynn performs, how well he does, how well he holds up his end of the bargain.
And the bargain is that he has information that would implicate Donald Trump and Jared Kushner and Jeff Sessions and the rest of them in an effort to pay Russia back for their help in the election by removing sanctions. That is the information.
And there's not anybody really left other than Jared Kushner, Jeff Sessions, Donald Trump.
There's Junior.
There's nobody left.
Yeah, there is. There's Junior. Well, I mean, in the administration.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying is that if somebody just said earlier, I think you'll find more plea deals, more people pleading guilty. Well, fine, because all that tells you is people are starting to say, I ain't taking the fall for this orange fucking asshole. I think people are starting to realize that Donald Trump ain't worth shit. He's not worth having a cold over.
Well, just let's keep it nice and simple. Here you have 4 people around Donald Trump and his administration transition team, right, that have all been either indicted or pled guilty. So you got 2 guilty pleas, and you got 2 people facing 12 counts of financial wrongdoing. So, I mean, what are the odds that you would have 4 people around a presidential campaign all associated with taking favors from Russia in exchange for releasing the sanctions, and that 2 of them have already pled guilty to lying to the FBI about this, and 2 of them are guilty of financial crimes or being charged with 12 counts of financial crimes? I mean, what kind of president is this? And
Manafort, he's going to fight it, is right?
I don't know.
He's fighting his charges.
I have no idea.
Well, so far he hasn't pled guilty, but the speculation.
Well,
is
maybe they haven't maybe they haven't exchanged the information that they believe that Manafort could deliver, and Manafort is saying no, I won't cooperate in that way, and they're saying fine, then face these 12 charges, and his lawyers are probably sitting there going, Paul, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. You're an old man. You're going to die like Paulie.
That's right. And the other thing is that even if Manafort is playing for a pardon, he's still got big-time charges in the state of New York. He's worse than the federal charges. I mean, he could. So, and Trump can't pardon that.
Right, he can't pardon state crimes. That's right.
So Manafort's up a creek without a paddle. All of this is actually really all come together quite nicely. It's kind of like when a cream pie kind of solidifies. When it all comes together. And it finally kind of that sets up. It's just setting up beautifully.
Brett, were you thinking of some weird kind of porn right there?
No. That was your mind.
No, that was Brett's mind. I could see it on his face. I know exactly what he was thinking.
Okay, but it's setting up beautifully. I was thinking about the holidays and making a dairy-free chocolate cream pie by using tofu. So,
oh god,
it set up beautifully. It was like perfect, but. That's the way it's starting to come together. And I can't see that. I'm curious to see what Jeff Sessions does next.
Oh, my God. I know.
That's what I want to see.
I know. It's an amazing thing. I mean, why the president won't give Jeff Sessions the actual, umbrella of executive privilege? Because the president hates Jeff Sessions. He hates him. He wants him to go down in flames. He wants him out of there. Trump is a grudge holder. This is why, Trump hates Indians. We started the week off with the Pocahontas insult, right? And we showed you that Trump has held this grudge against the Native American casino gaming industry because they were competition for him, and of course he lost that competition. He hates African Americans because they brought him to court when he was a young developer and refused to rent to them, and then went public with his hatred of the Central Park Five. Turned out to be completely wrong. None of those kids did anything, and has never forgiven the African American community for making him look like an ass. And he hates Jeff Sessions and holds a grudge against him because Jeff Sessions recused himself in the Russia investigation and has allowed for the appointment of a special prosecutor to happen. And look, here we are. So Trump is just a grudge holder. I mean, there's no. Trump feels so bulletproof as president. He feels like he'll pardon anybody he wants to. He probably thinks he can pardon himself, and so he's going to let them go down in flames.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
In this part of America, there's still hope they'll get the shot they need to revive an industry they're not willing to give up on just yet.
Trump's EPA holds climate hearings in coal country. Winter heat wave hits Greenland and breaks records in the U.S. West. New federal contracting scandal exposed in Puerto Rico's very slow recovery. Plus, good news for breathers in Wisconsin and Missouri.
Hey, I bet there's a lot of them. All of that good news and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It was wrong for the last administration to declare a war on coal. It was a real war, and the president said the war is over.
Who won the war on coal? Was it Christmas?
I know it wasn't you or me. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, winter may be setting in, but we are still seeing heat waves across the U.S. and across the world.
Yes, indeed we are. A rare November heat wave hit icy Greenland this week, bringing rain in winter and boosting temperatures as much as 36 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. And in the western U.S., Denver hit 81 degrees, breaking its all-time November record that was set just last year.
81 degrees in Denver in November?
Yeah.
Not good.
In West Virginia, the Trump administration's EPA held its only public hearing over its repeal of the Obama-era Clean Power Plan, which is intended to limit the carbon emissions from power plants that cause dangerous global warming.
This will force many of these coal-fired power plants to close. Many more will close, which would destroy the jobs and the family livelihoods for thousands of coal mining families.
That was coal baron Robert Murray of Murray Energy, the nation's largest coal mining company. The coal industry opposes the plan, even though industry analysts say coal's global decline is due to cheaper natural gas and renewables, not regulation. On the broadcast, environmental journalist Emily Atkin of the New Republic, who attended the hearing in West Virginia, noted that the Trump EPA's devotion to propping up the coal industry ignores the millions of Americans who suffer from coal's pollution.
The communities that live near producing plants, which often are disproportionately low income and minority communities, those aren't based in West Virginia, and I would argue that they're just as impacted by the Clean Power Plan as a coal miner, and yet the EPA doesn't have any scheduled public hearings in any of those areas.
No, they don't. That was Emily Atkin responding to my question about why they decided to have this hearing in Charleston, West Virginia, and nowhere else. And she said it was because Pruitt wanted to have these hearings in a place where the Clean Power Plan had the greatest impact, but it impacts everyone all over the country.
In Puerto Rico, the Associated Press has uncovered yet another contracting scandal in the botched federal emergency response to Hurricane Maria. AP reports that FEMA has canceled a $30 million contract that it awarded to a tiny 1-month-old Florida company to provide emergency tarps and supplies. But it took 4 weeks for FEMA to discover that the company failed to deliver anything. More than 2 months after Hurricane Maria, more than 1 million Puerto Ricans are still without electricity or clean water. Meanwhile, independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont has introduced a bill in the Senate to provide more than $140 billion in funding to repair Puerto Rico's and the U.S. Virgin Islands electric grids and crucial infrastructure.
Good luck with that, Bernie.
It's focused on sustainability, clean energy, and energy efficiency. But as you mentioned, passage seems unlikely, with Senate Republicans focused on their $1.5 trillion tax cut bill for the wealthy and corporations.
Priorities.
Senate Democrats don't have enough votes to stop a sneaky provision in the tax bill that opens up the pristine Alaska National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling. Meanwhile, the Trump Interior Department this week quietly issued new drilling permits allowing foreign oil company Eni to drill just off of Alaska's coast, starting as early as next month. But some good news for breathers. In Wisconsin, electric utility company We Energy announced it will permanently close its coal-fired power plant in Pleasant Prairie in 2018 and will move to cheaper, cleaner natural gas and solar. The company says the shift will lower prices for consumers and reduce its water use and air pollution.
I don't get it. I thought the war on coal was over.
And you'll like this one. In Missouri, your home state, and also the home state of the nation's two largest coal companies, St. Louis electric utility Ameren has announced it will build a massive wind farm by 2020. And utility company Empire in southern Missouri announced it will also build its own equally massive wind farm, but it's going even further, saying it's going to retire its non-competitive coal-fired power plant in 2019, more than 10 years ahead of schedule.
Nice. Finally, something to be proud of out of Missouri for a change. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Meet me in St. Louis, meet me at the fair.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Mary had a little lamb. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From Radio Beacon to Radio Beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
We're going to deliver. We're going to get the best people in the world.
You don't give people immunity unless they've committed a crime.
The president hires the very best people.
So something's wrong here. There is a cloud of corruption around her, around our government.
We're going to use our smartest and our best. We're not using political hacks anymore.
We do not need a reckless president who believes she is above the law.
He hires the best person for the job, period.
We have breaking news, and it is major breaking news in the Russia investigation. CNN has just learned that Robert Mueller has charged former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn with willfully and knowingly making false, fictitious, and fraudulent statements to the FBI.
Lock her up. That's right. That's right. Lock her up. Damn right. You're exactly right. There's nothing wrong with that.
He's a jackass.
Yes, he is a jackass, and he should go to the slammer, at least for the 5 years that he pled to. I just want everybody to understand that the conservatives, the cult members now, who would support a president who was working with a foreign government and is distancing us from our NATO allies in order to align our democracy with non-democracies like a Saudi Arabia theocracy, like a Russia oligarch / fascist or country with no free press, with a lot of civil rights violations and human rights violations, and locking up gay people and locking up Pussy Riot, right? And people like China, who are obviously communist dictatorships. Those have to be cult members at this point, because they don't favor democracy over a man. They favor this man and his fascist tendencies and his autocratic tendencies and his demagoguery over justice, equal justice under law, over due process, over equal protection, over free speech, freedom of religion, all these things. I mean, they go right along with this crazy. He's not crazy. I mean, he's crazy like a fox, with a man who has a plan to realign the United States and create a oligarchy, at least, and at best, a fascist society. So, this tax bill is really proof, in the endorsement of a pedophile, Roy Moore, which he'll do over the weekend, is really sick. Oh, by the way, there's a textbook that was written by Roy Moore that was just uncovered by Think Progress. You can see it in it's in my homework section at randirhodes.com/homework. But and by the way, while you're there, it is the first of the month, everybody. All the bills must be paid. All the bills must be paid. In fact, they are paid, and so now we need for you to think about the Christmas spirit. The Christmas spirit, not the Trump version of Christmas. Oh, did you? This is like so amazing to me. This is so amazing how nobody showed up last night.
Here, watch this. I was the one when I was here last time. I said, going to have Christmas again. I was the one that said you go to the department stores and you see Happy New Year and you see red and you see snow and you see all these things. You don't see Merry Christmas anymore. With Trump as your president, we are going to be celebrating Merry Christmas again.
Have a very Merry Christmas.
We want to say Merry Christmas to everybody.
A very, very Merry Christmas and a holiday filled with joy. I want to wish every American a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
So Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas.
All right, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Mele Kaliki Maka, everybody.
Mele Kaliki Maka. Merry Christmas, everybody. No one showed up last night for the national tree lighting. They are boycotting Christmas even because of the Donald Trump. It's unbelievable. It was a balmy night. Nice weather, in Washington, D.C. there yesterday. And nobody wanted to go and celebrate the Christmas with the Trump family. Can you blame them? Anyway, Roy Moore. He will be campaigning with Roy Moore over the weekend, except he won't set foot in Alabama. As I told you, he'll do it from Pensacola, Florida. Now, Think Progress, which reminded me to send you over to randyrhodes.com/homework if you want to see this. Or you can support the show by going to randyrhodes.com/support or celebrate Christmas by gifting, gifting a podcast to somebody who desperately needs to hear this fact-based broadcast of ours by going to randyrhodes.com/shop. That said, because it's first of the year and first of the month, I only bother you on the first of the month. But there's a textbook that's been uncovered that was written by Roy Moore. It was co-authored. It was a study course. It was published in 2011. And Think Progress, actually got hold of it. This is going to shock you. This is really going to blow your mind. It instructs students that women, this is the least of it, okay? It gets worse. But it instructs students of this course that women should not be permitted to run for elected office. And that if women do run for elected office, people have a moral obligation not to vote for them. This man sat on the Supreme Court of Alabama in the 21st century, okay? The course is called Law and Government, an introductory study course. And it comes with 28 hours of audio and visual lectures given by Roy Moore and others, and a study guide. It's available for purchase on Amazon, where, if you look at the page that sells this, it says, quote, Chief Justice Roy Moore, co-author, alongside Doug Phillips, Dr. Joseph Moorcraft, and Dr. Paul Gell. On the back of the packaging that has all the study course materials in it, there is Moore's name and a photo under featured speakers. It is a product that is sold by a group called Vision Forum, which doesn't exist anymore. Wait till I tell you why. It was a Texas-based evangelical organization headed by one Doug Phillips, who taught, check this out, in the days of #MeToo, okay? This is where they'd like for us to go back to. It taught biblical patriarchy. That is the theology that prohibits women from being anything but housewives, okay? It prescribes strict, unequal gender roles for men and women. Now, according to Vision Forum's website, it says, quote, egalitarian feminism is a false ideology that has bred false doctrine in the church and seduced many believers. This thing existed for about 10 years, going back to 99. Roy Moore served on the faculty of Vision Forum's, quote, Witherspoon School of Law and Public Policy. Except Witherspoon's School of Law and Public Policy is kind of like the Trump University. It's not a university. It's not even a school. It's not a school at all. It's a 4-day crash course that taught men and men only. That the Bible is the source of, quote, law and liberty, and the only sure foundation for addressing the challenging ethical questions of the 21st century. They have a best of album. I'm not kidding. And Roy Moore is on that best of album saying, quote, I came to share what I have learned and instead received a blessing. All who attend the Witherspoon School of Law and Public Policy have an opportunity to share in the restoration of our nation, one nation under God. The lecture that is on this album was recorded in 2008, and it was hosted and facilitated by this guy, Doug Phillips. And in the speech, Roy Moore recounts his fight over the Ten Commandments, and that big Roy's Rock, and he's bemoaning marriage equality, which the California Supreme Court approved a couple weeks before he recorded this, right? And he says, quote, as I think about what's going on here at Vision Forum and what Doug's doing, Doug Phillips is doing and has done, I'm a little envious because I admire Doug and the fact that he can round up these young men that are going to make a difference in our nation. Doug Phillips' organization, this Vision Foundation and the Witherspoon School of Law, that wasn't a school at all. It had nothing to do with law. It was a 4-day crash course on how to be, a woman hater. It's the man-hating man club or whatever that thing is. So Vision Forum closed in 2013 after Doug Phillips had to resign because he was having a very lengthy and inappropriate romantic and affectionate relationship with a woman not his wife. The woman not his wife, her name is Lourdes Torres Mantefol, and she sued Doug Phillips and Vision Forum, detailing in her complaint an emotionally, psychologically, and sexually abusive relationship that started between her and Doug Phillips when she was 15. It was settled. The suit was settled in 2016. It's the exact same story as Roy Moore and Lee Korfman. These people join each other's clubs like NAMBLA. Okay, like these porn clubs where underage barely legal, right? This is who these men are, and Donald Trump's going to campaign for him over the weekend. Here is what the Vision Forum's biblical patriarchy class included. Now, remember, he's a pedophile. And he settled a case against a girl who said he was sexually abusive to her, not just emotionally and psychologically abusive, but sexually abusive to her when she was only 15 years old. And she brought a civil case because the statute had run, and she was able to get him to settle with her for an undisclosed amount, non-disclosure agreements, etc. Right? Okay. So this is what they write. This is the forum's position. Quote, since daughters are given in marriage by their fathers, an obedient daughter, okay, if you're not gagging right now, you have a problem. An obedient daughter will desire her father to guide the process of finding her a husband. By and large, the issue of the female magistrate, meaning that, women who run for elected office, by and large, the issue of the female magistrate ruling in authority in America would not have been anywhere near as controversial. The controversy was beginning to brew with the women's suffrage movement. Then they quote Isaiah 3 as justification for the fact that women should never run for elected office, and that if they do, as a Christian man, you have the obligation to vote against them. They quote that there is a blanket prohibition of women in leadership positions, which, by the way, is not widely held by Christians because the translation that they're relying on, actually the word that they translated into women comes from the Hebrew. Hello. And while it has the same amount of consonants as the Hebrew word does, they have used different vowel points. And so they have translated the word women from what was actually the Hebrew word creditors. Yeah. So and then they write, one of the most destructive ideologies of the last 100 years have been the doctrines of feminism, which has transformed our culture and paved the way for abortion on demand, the homosexual agenda, undermined our church and subverted the doctrines of the biblical family. Feminism is a radical agenda. Nothing enrages feminists more than the biblical doctrine of male leadership. Feminism and those who have been influenced by it advocate instead for what we're going to call an egalitarian approach, where men and women are touted as equal in all respects, except maybe the most obvious physical differences, and that they're equally fit to serve in any occupation or to serve in any office or position of leadership or in any sphere of life. He goes on to say women should not work outside the home, run for office, or take on any role that gives women dominance over men, calling women the weaker vessel. Women are only fit to be homemakers and should dedicate their lives to their husbands and children and never work outside. Sometimes we may have a hard time discerning the faith, the character, and the views of a particular candidate. Yeah, but we can usually discern if the candidate is a man or a woman, and so there's no excuse on that one. In conclusion, we've argued that Scripture teaches us that it is not God's revealed will for a woman to serve as a civil magistrate and thus to rule over men in the civil sphere. Written by a man who settled a case of pedophilia by being sexually abusive to a girl who was 15 years old at the time, co-authored by Roy Moore, sold as being Roy Moore's vision forum, which doesn't exist anymore because the man who started it had to resign after admitting that he was emotionally, psychologically, and sexually abusive while married to a girl when she was just 15 years old. Just saying. So, you know, like I say, only cult members are supporting Donald Trump at this point. There is no excuse to support a man who would support Roy Moore or the subversion, and this is the bigger issue, of American democracy, over which Donald Trump now presides and rules. This is a very strange thing. Oh, and then there's this.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Hey everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show, and all I want for Christmas is an impeachment. But the next best thing is working at the Randi Rhodes Show, and that can't happen without your support. Let's help Randi make this a hard truth holiday season, and she can't do that without your support. So please keep listening and buy a stinking podcast.
Happy holidays, jerky fans. Herky Jerky knows it's the season to enjoy the world's best jerky and meat sticks, and they want you to save a bundle while doing it. Herky Jerky, first of all, would like to thank you all you fiercely loyal customers, because they had their most successful year thanks to you despite Mother Nature doing its worst. Jason at Herky Jerky is so grateful that you enjoy his products, and everyone at Herky Jerky is so glad to provide them. So, as a special thank you, Herky Jerky is serving up their best offer of the year for Christmas giving. $10 off any order of $60 or more, or $15 off any order $100 or more without a promo code. Just visit herkyjerky.com. And the now famous bacon jerky, new fat-free and delicious turkey jerky, and all four of the new nitrite and preservative-free flavors, plus good old beef jerky, and all the exotic game jerkies make perfect holiday gifts. Buffalo, elk, venison sticks, 3 different varieties of beef smokies, all make great stocking stuffers. So choose your favorites now. Take advantage of the savings, which also includes free shipping on any 2 packs or more. Everyone at Herky Jerky would like to wish a safe and happy holiday season to all of you, and thank you once again for your loyalty. This offer starts today and it goes through all of December. Happy holidays from herkyjerky.com.
Hello, Progressive Voices Tune-In listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week. What the heck is going on?
Could one even imagine, of all the places to make cuts, the CHIP program? They needed to reauthorize federal spending on the CHIP program no later than September 30th of this year. Well, guess what? They didn't. So the CHIP program, which is the Children's Health Insurance Program, there are funds now sitting in the states that carry them through the end of 2017. But that's it. When those funds are gone, they're gone. And unless Congress gets its act together and does a new reauthorization, that program will not have funding. So there's a lot of worry about whether or not this Congress can even pass something that is enormously popular. Take care of the children, for goodness sakes.
How many children does CHIPS insure?
CHIP covers millions of families, and some of what we're concerned about now is those millions of families who get coverage through CHIP for children, and also who get coverage, some who get coverage for the adults in the family through the expanded Medicaid programs, may also face some serious problems if Congress does not reauthorize funding for CHIP. So this is mind-boggling to think that millions of families would have to face worrying about whether or not kids who've been getting treatment for everything from asthma to diabetes, there are a lot of things that kids deal with now and health issues that if they are not treated properly, and nurses know this when they're kids, they are going to be lifelong health problems.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Okay, This is really the crux of the matter, okay? Because I don't want you to have to come up against a conservative or, somebody who is a cult member still for Trump. And, they'll argue to you over the weekend, oh, well, he only pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. He didn't do anything else. No. That means that they have not bothered to read anything today about the 10-page plea agreement. This is a plea agreement, meaning Flynn promised to provide the special prosecutor, Bob Mueller, with pieces of information Bob Mueller felt were valuable to his investigation into whether or not Donald Trump cooperated, colluded, whatever word you want to use, was used by, was in league with Vladimir Putin's plan to denigrate Hillary Clinton and make Donald Trump president so that the United States would not just, get rid of the sanctions against Russia, but also align itself with Russia's foreign policy in places like Syria, in places like Ukraine, Crimea. This is much bigger than any, cult member, okay? And how do I know this? Because there is a 10-page agreement. The date on the agreement is November 30th. It was filed in court today. Once it's filed in court, it's public, okay? Unless they wanted to put it under seal, which they did not. Mueller did not. And so you can read the damn thing. And in the document, the 10 pages, there is a section called cooperation. And what was exchanged for the deal was this, quote, Flynn agreed that he would cooperate by, and I'm quoting the document, providing sworn written statements, taking government-administered polygraph examinations, plural, and participating in covert law enforcement activities. You know what that means, don't you? Covert law enforcement activities? That means wearing a wire. That's right. And because this was only filed today, and last week, right up until last week, Flynn was in a cooperation agreement with the Trump attorneys. It means that maybe in this past week, Flynn wore a wire and was having conversations with Donald Trump or Jared Kushner or Don Jr. Because we know, and this is why this little tidbit of information now is important. Remember, we kept on, being told, all of us by the people who were close to the administration, that were leaking. His own White House has been leaking information, and they said that it was important to note that Donald Trump was still in touch with Michael Flynn. Now it becomes a key element, because he agreed that he would participate in covert law enforcement activities. Flynn also agrees in writing to promptly turn over any and all evidence of crimes about which he is aware. That's why there's only one charge. They negotiated listen, there's so many charges that he was facing. It's unbelievable. I won't say treason because it's not a time of war, and treason can only be charged in a time of war. But Flynn was, looking at he denied that he discussed U.S. sanctions placed on Russia with Kislyak, but there were phone transcripts of intercepted calls. He was paid $500,000 by foreign clients for consulting work and speaking fees, including contracts he failed to list on his security clearance applications, on his financial disclosure forms. He only belatedly disclosed lobbying work that his firm engaged in on behalf of the Turkish government. And there's a whole ton of other things that, he was guilty of doing. And he wasn't charged with those things because of this plea deal. This 10-page agreement lays out what was exchanged for one count of lying to the FBI, which carries a penalty of 5 years. But we all know that in the last week he was worried about his son because his son was his chief of staff and his son knew everything that was going on. So this was definitely a plea deal. And it's all in a 10-page charging document that, Lars Larson, what a douche. But, I've debated him. There's no such thing as debating these people. They just, they hear what they want to hear. They say what they think that the Constitution says. They don't understand basic, arithmetic facts. Long division is a slog for them. These are the people that are stunned by the marshmallows in Lucky Charms. You know what I mean? Everything shocks them. Everything. But it's a 10-page plea agreement. And so all these stipulations that are in it, require that Michael Flynn do these things. And if he doesn't do these things, then the plea agreement can be withdrawn. And Michael Flynn can be charged, and so can his son, with the full breadth of charges that were dangled in order to get him to sign this. Now, also, one more section that appears in this plea agreement, and not the Papadopoulos, who also pled guilty. Now, Papadopoulos also agreed to cooperate, but not in the Papadopoulos argument, is a section called Government's Obligations. In that section, the government agrees to file a motion. The motion's called a 5K 1.1. It gives defendants a chance to tell the court why they should be sentenced to a lesser crime. In order to get such a motion filed, the agreement, the stipulation, does not have to appear in the plea agreement for the prosecutors to file the motion, but everybody's betting that Papadopoulos, who cooperated, will get that too. And they'll all get to plead to even let, why they. So, like I said, Michael Flynn's facing 5 years right now under the statute of lying to the FBI. So he made them put in there that when he's facing the bar of justice on that particular guilty plea, that he be allowed to argue that he cooperated, that he wore a wire, that he produced documents that implicated a bigger fish. It's Donald Trump, in order to get less time, maybe 5 years suspended or house arrest or whatever, or supervision. So this is what Mueller's team is doing. They're looking for cooperation so it could get up the ladder of the Trump team. It's the mob. It's a mob prosecution. This is like the capos would give us somebody in the hierarchy, and then somebody in the hierarchy would give you the boss. Flynn was a capo. And they were telling Flynn, they tell Manafort, they're telling all these old freaks, you're going to die in jail like Paulie. And Paulie says, I'm not going to die. I'm 70 years old. I'm not going to die in prison. Paulie did die in prison. So, I mean, don't let them dupe you because you weren't aware that there's more to the plea agreement to be read than just, he pled guilty. There is an actual document, 10 pages long, that say what Michael Flynn agrees to do is covert activities for the prosecution, wearing a wire, produce documents that would implicate the bigger fish, take a lie detector test, many of them actually, and give interviews to the prosecution without the benefit of counsel present, meaning without a lawyer. Nobody to object for you. And by the way, when you go in front of a grand jury, which is a separate event, you don't get the benefit of a lawyer, as you know. So, Michael Flynn is not only will he be called before a grand jury, this week there was supposed to be testimony from some PR consultants that worked with Michael Flynn. And I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. Maybe it was yesterday. I think it was Wednesday. We were leaving and it just crossed the newswire. And we saw it on the way out the door that these consultants' testimony to the grand jury was postponed. And the reason why it was postponed is because they were locking up this deal with Flynn. They didn't need the PR consultants to testify in front of the grand jury. They will need Michael Flynn, though. And Michael Flynn, when he testifies in front of the grand jury, will not have the benefit of an attorney. But this goes even further. It says that he will interview with Mueller with a lie detector strapped to him without benefit of counsel, and that he'll wear a wire. He's a rat. All right, Rick in Los Angeles.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, I have 3 words for you.
Yeah.
Lock him up.
Yes, and that's what people were chanting as he was turning himself in.
Yeah. That was great.
Yeah.
He obviously has a lot of valuable information to provide against the capo, or, the boss, I guess, Trump. And his attorney did a hell of a job in negotiating that plea agreement. I just read the first page or two.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to look at the sentencing guidelines that basically state the prosecution's recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking at a total offense level of 4, which basically, for a first-time offender, almost certainly means no jail time because the range is 0 to 6 months in federal prison. And, chances are if you're in that zone, you hardly ever get sentenced to prison. It'll probably be probation.
Yeah, but so what
very valuable to get.
I was going to say what Mueller got was exactly what Mueller wants. And if everybody understands that this is a special prosecutor looking to prosecute the president of the United States for, and this isn't the word because it's not a legal term, collusion, but it's a quid pro quo investigation, basically saying that Russia gave dirt on Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump, and in exchange, Donald Trump agreed to X, right, to do certain things.
To try to get the sanctions off.
That's one of the things. That's one in my list. List. The other is to align ourselves with Russia's preferred foreign policy, to distance the United States from its allies, to break up NATO, to allow all kinds of mischief to go on.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I have some other good news. Apparently, the betting markets have raised Trump's odds of impeachment from 33 to 41% now. As a result of the Flynn guilty plea.
Oh, nice. Well, Sean Spicer lied. Everybody. I got to tell you, today, what was her name? Kathleen Parker, the conservative columnist.
Okay,
She stole my line. Do you remember the other day I was saying Trump built his wall and its name is Sarah Huckabee Sanders?
Oh, that's a great line.
I know. I want everybody to look at the title of Kathleen Parker's op-ed piece, conservative writer today. She said Trump built his wall and its name's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I'm like, wow.
Well, they say
Hi, Kathleen.
They say that imitation is the highest form of flattery.
And I take it that way. I absolutely do.
And I'm gonna rip somebody off of a line. I have a prediction here. I believe that this weekend you're going to see Trump tweeting like as crazy as a sprayed roach at a decon party. That's Bob Kincaid's line, so I'll give credit where credit is due.
Whose line is that?
Bob Kincaid. He's the West Virginia progressive talker.
Oh, okay.
He's got an online program.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. But what I want to see happen, Randy, because the political system is gridlocked, I would like to see Mueller indict both Trump and Pence with regard to their, conspiring to, cooperate with Russia.
Yeah, and here's another little thing to remember. Okay, as we wonder whether or not Pence falls into the category of indictables.
Right.
Pence was up for the VP job, but so was Flynn, meaning the conversations that were had with Pence and the conversations that were had with Flynn are the same conversations. So, Pence knew everything too.
So what Mueller may do is he may indict the president and vice president just to force Congress's hand.
Ooh,
they're not
that.
going to impeach otherwise.
Ooh,
huh?
Love that.
Yeah,
love it.
So. Yeah. Happy Friday, you
Happy
bastard.
Friday. Ooh,
Almost
it's
3 o'clock.
Yes, and it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Even I will celebrate this Christmas. My boyfriend James Comey tweeted. I haven't heard from him in so long. But justice rolled down like waters in righteousness, like an ever-flowing stream.
To speak to Randy, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randy's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randy's house. You know, eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randy was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please, go to RandiRhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
This is Ezra Levin, Executive Director of Indivisible. Please go to indivisibleguide.com, type in your zip code, find your local Indivisible group, and join the movement to resist Trump's agenda. We've teamed up with Progressive Voices Network to help your community take action and hold Congress accountable.
Who is this document by and for? We are former progressive congressional staffers who saw the Tea Party beat back President Obama's agenda. We see the enthusiasm to fight the Trump agenda and want to share insider info on how best to influence Congress to do that. You want to do your part to beat back the Trump agenda and understand that will require more than calls and petitions. You should use this guide, share it, amend it, make it your own, and get to work.
Donald Trump is the biggest popular vote loser in history to ever call himself president-elect. In spite of the fact that he has no mandate, he will attempt to use his congressional majority to reshape America in his own racist, authoritarian, and corrupt image. If progressives are going to stop this, we must stand indivisibly opposed to Trump and the members of Congress, or MOCs, who would do his bidding. Together, we have the power to resist, and we have the power to win.
Take action and hold Congress accountable. This is Ezra Levin on the Progressive Voices Network, asking you to join the millions who decided to become part of the movement to resist Trump's agenda. Check out indivisibleguide.com to start resisting on your home turf. Keep listening for more ways you can get involved.
This is the voice of the resistance. You're listening to the Progressive Voices Network.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randy, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
And you know why? And you know why? You know why we're saying that? We're saying that because if I, a guy who knows this business, if I did a tenth of what she did, I would be in jail today.
Yeah, except there's a plea deal available if you, do covert operations for the special prosecutor investigating Donald Trump and family. Oh, my God. Jared, Trump, Jr., God only knows what Ivanka knows, you know. I mean, this whole freaking crime family, And everybody's right. He's going to tweet like a madman over the weekend. He's going to, start with, Hillary and and this and that. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is Flynn is cooperating, and Flynn was there in the administration. Flynn was there. Flynn has been around Donald Trump since 2015. In August of 2015, that was when Donald Trump interviewed Michael Flynn in a 90-minute interview, a 90-minute meeting in New York. And then in December, August, September, October, November, December, 4 months later, That's when Flynn goes to Moscow and attends that dinner at the Kremlin for RT and sits next to Vladimir Putin. Jill Stein was at that dinner too. Know why? Because that's how early Vladimir Putin was figuring out that Hillary needed to be stopped. Okay, and he didn't care if it came from the left or the right. He didn't care. He thought if Jill Stein can peel off votes from Hillary, she's useful to me too. If Donald Trump is, the nominee, then, oh my God, we could really show him how you teach fascism to, Americans. We can show them, what you need to tell people, how you preach populism. Then you look at this tax bill, and oh my God, and it'll probably pass tonight. They say they have the votes to pass it tonight. Last night, did you watch the C-SPAN? It didn't, it wasn't able to proceed. They did the motion to proceed, and it wasn't able to proceed. So now tonight, it looks like they're going to try and pass it. But you know what? These Republicans are taking their lives in their hands because this tax bill is so dangerous and so bad. Every doctor's organization, I got to tell you, every doctor's organization in the country has written an op-ed or joined together to release a statement saying this is going to kill people, okay, because of the repeal of the individual mandate. Every group is talking about how bad this bill is for every living human being that makes less than $160,000 a year. So, they're taking their lives in their hands if they vote for this thing. This thing is off the charts. And really, as conservatives, are they going to advocate for raising the deficit to reward corporate America, who's already sitting on piles of cash, have full employment at all their companies? It's not like they're going to hire anybody. They don't need anybody. They don't need anybody. This is crazy. This is so off the charts. It's such a strange, hideous time for ordinary working people. People and we're not ordinary. We're extraordinary. We're the ones that built the middle class. We're the ones that consume. We're the one. And let me tell you what the difference is between third world countries, emerging countries, and the United States of America. We have a strong middle class, and that is the one key element that makes us successful. The middle class is what makes America go. And we found this out after the Great Depression when FDR said, listen, to try nothing, we got to try everything because, look what they did with their crazy tax plan. There's a great article in the homework section today. And it was written by a guy who studies the Great Depression and actually teaches about it, wrote a whole book about the Great Depression. And he talks about how the tax plan in 1920 was the same tax plan that they're putting forward now, and how it ended up in the Great Depression, and how FDR decided to flip the script and make sure that the middle class was the one who got breaks, and that corporations paid more and the very wealthy paid more, and created an entire middle class that saved us from the ruin of the Great Depression brought on by corporatism and this love for the Gilded Age wealthy people. Oh, it's so good. It's such a good article, really. You got to read it. It'll make it all clear to you. And so if they do this, they surely know that they are going to lose in 2018. And if they don't pass anything, they know they're surely going to lose in 2018. So this is what they're grappling with. And this president is probably going to be indicted, or at least, well, I don't know that he can be indicted. He'll be impeached, or at least articles of impeachment will be drafted by 2018. And that is likely to actually happen because the charges will be laid out by a special prosecutor named Bob Mueller, based on wiretaps that were gathered by cooperation from guys like George Papadopoulos, who you never heard of, and Michael Flynn, who you have, who both agreed to covertly aid the prosecution of Donald Trump. It's a good one. This is one for the movies. This is, and not an Oliver Stone. I would like a Tom Hanks. Tom in Chicago.
Oh, hello, Randy.
Hello.
I think we need a nationwide general strike.
What good does that do?
Well, to force Trump and Pence out of office will put pressure on the GOP donors, will put pressure on the GOP members of Congress to get rid of Trump and Pence.
Never happen. They're global.
No. Even if a few million people go on strike, they'll start to hurt. And
yeah, it'll hurt you.
That's all they care about is the bottom line. If they don't get money out of Trump and Pence, they'll get rid of them.
First of all, there is no organized labor anymore. They have wiped it out in their march to fascism. Number two, a strike, meaning you don't go to work, means you don't get paid. And most people cannot live, and it would destroy them. And then the people who do have a couple of bucks that could afford not to go to work, who are few and far between anymore, their small business would suffer because there'd be no customers. So that just is that's a bad idea.
Well, I mean, people have gone to war for freedom. So, I mean, I think this is a much less of a sacrifice.
When did people go to war for freedom?
Well, the Revolutionary War.
Oh, yeah.
World War II?
Right, and that was the same time that we had, Coke Industries, right? That's that we had globalization then, and yeah, I mean, listen, it's a different world. Wake up, smarten up. There is no organized labor anymore. No one can go on strike anymore because people work for hourly wages that are a pittance. What ails us isn't that corporations need more tax breaks to reward their shareholders. What ails us is we don't have a $15 minimum wage. Wages are stagnant. Wages are, and the idea that you would sacrifice, your ability to pay your rent or your car payment to get this is ridiculous. I've heard this a lot. It's just stupid, is what it is. Okay, this is breaking. Ex-Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland. Is the Trump transition official referenced in court documents who discussed U.S. sanctions response to Russia with Flynn?
Right. Kushner was Israel.
Oh, Kushner was Israel and KT McFarland was the Russia?
Right.
It's Trump. Sven in San Francisco. Sven.
Hello there. Tuned in late, so I'm sorry if I missed it, but I just cracked up when I heard the man yelling, lock him up, as Flynn walked out.
I know, and he's such a moron, Flynn. He didn't realize that Kislyak was routinely surveilled, and yet he's talking to him on an open phone line. And yet I still believe that as moronic as he is, he gets the irony of yelling, lock him up.
Anyway, I also want to comment about the tax plan or the tax screw, whatever you want to call it. I hear a lot about the Northeast, like Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, but obviously California has huge taxes, and if this plan goes through where they take away our state and local tax deduction, that's about half of my deductions right there.
Yeah.
And then on top of the personal exemption going away, their little increase is I'm still going to lose. So I'm paying more money when this thing goes through.
Like 62% of the middle class will pay more money when this thing goes through. This is what I call the royal scam. Okay, this is really 1929 Gilded Age, tax plan. You got to read this. Andrew Mellon, one of the richest men in the world. Okay, from the the Carnegies, the Mellons, right? He was Calvin Coolidge's Treasury Secretary. This is like the last time that we had the world's richest man as our Treasury Secretary. Now we got Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross as Commerce Secretary, and they sit there and they design these plans and sell it to the American people that if you give those guys more money, they'll be nicer to you. And it never, ever, ever works. This trickle-down scam, this ideology has failed so miserably every time. Now, remember, when we had a booming economy, the last time we had a booming economy was...
The rich were paying 70% back in the 50s and 60s.
No, actually, I'm talking about, recently would be Bill Clinton. And what did Bill Clinton do to spur the economy after, the first Bush got done with it? He raised taxes ever so slightly, but he raised taxes on the richest people.
And Reagan had to do that too, didn't he? After a tax cut, didn't Reagan come back and raise the taxes?
Yeah, he had to. And that's what this trigger that they're fighting for, that they lost the argument, that's the kind of thing that they're looking to do, is to put a trigger in, like a la Reagan, that says that if you cut it, if you cut them too much, there'll be a recession or a depression, which is what happened in 1929. And so he did raise taxes after he lowered taxes, and that's what the Corkers and the Johnsons and the supposed deficit hawks were fighting for last night, and they lost that fight. But when you consider what works for the economy, Bill Clinton, with all his many flaws, and I think everybody knows I am the first person to call him out on his deregulation, march to the right and his, womanizing and all that crap. But he raised the top marginal tax rate in 1993. Every Republican voted against it. They all were on the TV. It was CNN at that time, just railing. It's going to be a disaster. We're going to see a recession, economic. It's going to be a disaster. And it was followed by one of the greatest periods of prosperity in American history. And we got a budget surplus. So then the second Bush comes in, and what does he say? It's your money. We have to give it back. But he gives it back to the wealthy again.
That's another transfer of middle and lower class money to the wealthy.
Just as the middle class was starting to prosper. And we haven't had any growth in wages since then. We haven't had any 22 million jobs created since then. We haven't had, investment in industries like the tech industry since then. Everybody else around the world is investing in clean energy, new energy, a wind energy. I mean, you can go around the world and you can see Dubai is looking at currency and getting out of the banking system with Bitcoin and other things. And then you've got, the Germans, and you've got the Chinese creating the new technologies for energy. Even the Saudis are in on it because they know that this oil thing is over, and even they're innovating. The Middle East is innovating, and we're stagnant. We're just laying here saying, we have to roll back all the environmental regulations. For what?
Yep. Got a friend in Germany who says 70% of their homes have individual solar, and they get paid by the power company to sell that extra energy back to them.
Yes, exactly.
They're trying to kill solar. They're still trying to kill solar.
Costa Rica has just celebrated almost one whole year on renewable energy alone. Just renewable energy. No more gas, no more oil, just renewable energy.
One last quickie for you. Do you know anything about this need to impeach website?
Yeah, Tom Steyer.
Does he sound legit or not?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
That man has spent $20 million trying to get America to wake up.
Sometimes it's just a ploy to get email addresses.
No, and Tom Steyer's issue is climate change. That is the thing that he is, desperate to get people to do something about. And so, this is how he made his fortune. So you can see that renewables and solar and all kinds of, energy, algae. I mean, there's so much out there. He's a billionaire because of these things. Okay,
I'm here in San Francisco, and they've been talking about harnessing the tidal waves because we have so much wave action around here. I mean, it's just a no-brainer.
Oh, water! What a terrible idea. I mean, look at the Hoover Dam.
No, but they're talking ocean tide through the Golden Gate and that kind of stuff that, they can put it underwater. Nobody even sees it, and they generate huge amounts of energy.
I know. I like the windmills, though. I think they're very pretty. I've been a lot of places in Europe. I mean, unbelievable amounts of windmills. And where was it? Was it in the fjords of Norway? I can't remember. But there's these little islands, like thousands and thousands. It's the most picturesque, unbelievably breathtaking geography you've ever seen. And there's windmills offshore, and they look so beautiful. I mean, it doesn't detract. They put them in locations where you could still see the full panoramic, untouched majesty of these island. I guess it was Sweden. I think it was Sweden. It was unbelievable. But just remember, when Bill Clinton raised taxes, we had the most vibrant, expanding economy. When he raised taxes on the top bracket, that was the last big boom we've had, okay? I want you, if you only read one thing, I want you to read the one called I'm a Depression Historian. The GOP tax bill is straight out of 1929. In the homework section, I think I titled it Straight Outta 1929. It's quick. It's easy to understand. It's the best. Also, please support the show. It's the first of the month. It's the only time I ever really, ask. And in the Christmas spirit, a lovely gift would be a podcast, and you can get that at randyrhodes.com/shop. There's gift cards there. All right. Have a good weekend. Celebrate the perp walk. Lock him up. You know, you could have a little toast to that, whatever. It's just now starting. Really. It's just now starting. Go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.